You're listening to the Career Jump podcast. Insights, interviews, and success stories to inspire and give you the edge when you make your next career jump. Hosted by your career concierge, Andrew McCaskill.
Hello and welcome back to the Executive Career Jump podcast. I'm your host and career concierge, Andrew McCaskill, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Elaine Weir. Thanks for joining us, Elaine.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
No, I've been a fan of yours on LinkedIn for some time. So Elaine's the founder of CV Friends and gets involved with helping people, as I'm sure she'll be telling us during this episode, around anything to do with CVs and LinkedIn and job searching, but also for me really stands out in terms of what she does to help people in need. And so thank you on behalf of the job search community for everything you've been doing. It's hugely, hugely appreciated.
It's no problem.
It's fine. I know you wouldn't bring it up, so I'm going to. So tell us a bit more about you and the work that you're currently doing for our listeners.
Okay, so I founded my company CV Friends. I work in partnership with my husband. Probably people don't know that because he's a very quiet partner, but comes in every so often to do some of the calls or consultations if it's his area of expertise, but everything else is done by me. And yeah, I kind of ended up in this because I've been a recruiting manager for over 20 years. So I'm not a recruiter. I've actually sat and made the decisions and written the role profiles, the job descriptions, decided what the service needs, what kind of people we need, and actually then done the interviewing. And I've worked in the contact center industry. So I've done large scale recruitment to individual kind of one-to-one interviews. And the one thing that's always struck me is the number of people that I would get to interview, and the application you had from them was nothing in comparison to the person that you were interviewing. And then you find yourself thinking, how many really good candidates have I lost because the application really wasn't very good? And I can't judge that because the only thing I've got to judge when I'm shortlisting for interview is that piece of paper. And I'm really conscious of that. And it was the one thing that always struck me. And then I just started helping people with CVs, and somebody, I think it was a boss at the time, actually said, I think you should probably set this up as a business. I mulled it over for 6 months like you do, thinking, oh, it's a bit scary. I'm not sure I can do that. And then thought, oh, do you know, I've got nothing to lose. So I did. And here I am. And I love it. And the big thing that I love about it is the ability to impact people. So yeah, it's a business. And yes, obviously I've got children to feed and all that kind of stuff. But actually for me, a big part of this is that ability to impact people, to be able to show somebody where they're going wrong, that enables them to open doors to opportunities that they never thought was possible because they just didn't know how to do it. I see all the time people say, oh, you just Google it. It's not as straightforward as that for some people. Do you know, they need that support. They need to have that conversation. They need to bounce the ideas off, or they need to talk to you in a consultation, where the number of times I'll talk to somebody and there's that light bulb moment where they go, oh my God, Elaine, I never thought of it like that. The perfect example was a logistics manager. This was a couple of years ago now. And I asked him, do you manage budgets? No. Well, how much revenue does each lorry that you manage bring in each week that you're responsible for making sure that revenue comes in? He has to go out with the clients and stuff. Anyway, when it came to it, he was responsible. It was his department. He was the manager for bringing in £25 million revenue a year, and said, I have never added that up. I just work on I think it was £3,000 a wagon a week or something. He said, and because I think of per wagon per week, I've never thought about the fact that I manage this number of wagons. And suddenly it was like, Elaine, I'm really selling myself short, aren't I? Mm-hmm. Yes, you are. And so that's why I do what I do. That's the opportunity that I have. And and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. I love that example of reframing that experience into something that's more sellable and more of a marketing thing. I think the same humility that makes people good leaders actually gets in the way of their ability to market.
It does. And people think that, and I used to think this all the time in my junior career, that, that people that were in leadership positions were exceptionally confident and knew everything and had full self-belief. But actually, they're the people that will say to me all the time, I really don't feel comfortable just doing this. I'm a managing director, I can run this company. But the reality is, Elaine, I that I can't do that. And they actually just need to outsource it sometimes to somebody that doesn't have any of those emotional links, to say, well, that's all right, because I can, because I'm not emotionally linked to you. And so we can take that out of it, and then there's other people that they need to be shown what the value that they have. And again, they're working at very senior positions and other people have seen the value, but for some reason they don't see it in themselves. And people think that, and it's that self. It's when you put self in there. You'll know this, Andrew, as well as I do. It's self. When you put self into the process, we all go to pot. I do it. I had to send you a bio for this. I don't write my own bio. I get somebody else to do it because it doesn't feel right, because it doesn't sit well with any of us, in all honesty. And so it does come down to that need sometimes to have that support to help you understand the value that you bring.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you squirmed when I paid you a compliment at the start.
You'll never find I'm comfortable with things, but it's the same with everybody, isn't it? I think that we get like that.
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with you if you don't, actually. You mentioned helping people unlock different opportunities and helping them, not make the mistakes that are stopping them getting where they need to get to. So we've covered humility, we've covered, I guess, underplaying responsibilities. What kind of other things are people getting wrong, do you think, or barriers that they're putting in the way of themselves?
I think that when we talk about ourselves, what they tend to do is they forget when they're looking at, so let's say they're looking at that next step. I don't know, they want to move upwards, maybe they've been made redundant and that's a really challenging time, is they forget to use the skills that they have in the workplace. That humility comes in, they find it very difficult. And then they forget to say, well, actually, if I was writing a report, for example, the first thing I think about is, who is my audience? Am I writing it for a director? Am I writing it for an operational manager? Because those two people will require a fundamentally different report with different language, different data, and they don't do that. So then they start looking for a job, and every skill that they've built up in their professional life goes out the window. So they start creating this career autobiography, if you like. The number of CVs I get that are an autobiography, when actually they should be a very succinct, outcome-focused document that says, that's your problem, this is what I can do to solve that for you. Because they don't think about their audience, and so they forget about all of their professional skill because self comes into it. And so it becomes about me, not about my career. They forget to see it as a professional document or a professional process, even in LinkedIn interviews, where they get the jobs from, that networking element. Nobody brings that professional perspective. That, for me, it would be a lot easier if people treated it as if it was a job.
Yeah, no, I love that. Really good guidance. Your CV is not your autobiography. That might be your next LinkedIn post.
That's a good one.
It's very true. It's really, really true. So the big question on everyone's minds when it comes to CVs, does size matter?
I don't think so. So I've heard lots of different stuff about this, that it should be 2 pages, or there's another CV writer I know who says, don't focus on the pages, it should be 1,200 words. What I say to people is, you are you, and your career is yours, and therefore your CV should be as long as it needs to be. Now, the caveat I always put on that is, we're not rewriting Tolstoy's War and Peace here, and it should be succinct. The longest CV that I've ever written was 5 pages, and it's an anomaly. It's not something that I would normally do. And that person got a job with Deloitte, and it was no problem. But they had a very complex, it was 8 or 9 pages when I first got it. So I did a good job, to be fair, but that's the longest I've ever produced. On average, a CV that I write will normally be between 2 to 2.5 pages long. And it comes down to that so what question. When you've written it, you then need to ask yourself, in direct relation to where you want to be, what is the role that you're looking for? So what? And if the answer to that so what question is, I don't know, it shouldn't be on your CV. I had a project manager who had done a hairdressing qualification that she was really proud of. And so she should be. And we should all be proud of all of our achievements. It's not a qualification that a project manager needs. It doesn't need to be on your CV. If you won an award 15, 20 years ago and you haven't won one since, with the greatest of respect, you're not an award-winning manager. You haven't won one since. It needs to be relative and it needs to be recent. And if you keep those 2 points in mind, then what you find is you find yourself looking at it and cutting out a lot of the the nonsense that's in there, because that's what it is. There's a load of fluff that people put in their CVs because it's that self bit. Again, we just start rambling like we do if we're talking about ourselves. You ask me to talk about myself specifically rather than CVs. There'd be a lot of rambling and fluff goes on because I'm not comfortable doing it, as are a lot of people aren't. And they do exactly the same on the CV. They
do. That's absolutely right. So it's not so much the size, it's the relevance.
Yeah.
It's making sure that everything in there is in there for a reason and serves the audience.
Absolutely. And if you do that, you find you won't do more than 2 to 2.5 pages. And I don't know anybody, and I've certainly never done this, that's put a CV in the bin because they've looked at it and gone, oh, it's 3 or 4 pages. I'm not reading that. If you grab them on the first page, they'll read the rest of it. If you don't grab them on the first page, they won't read the rest of it, regardless of how long it is. But if you have something to offer, they will read that CV.
No, I totally agree.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew here. Just wanted to very briefly interrupt this podcast episode to tell you a little bit more about our Career Jump Club. So our Career Jump Club was created to help job seekers understand what they want and how to get it, right? So becoming a club member is a great move if you're looking to get the clarity and confidence in order to secure your next role. With the membership, you get a number of different things. So first thing you get is access to our online platform, which has over 30 videos, 40, 50 different templates, workbooks, and it takes you through everything from sort of understanding what you want to how to position your CV and LinkedIn, how to interview, how to close offers and negotiate better salaries, a full end-to-end job search course effectively for senior leaders. So you get that, you get a fortnightly group coaching call, which is with me and with the other members, where we bounce around best practice, share slide decks, share techniques, and share the latest data on what's working for people. And you get to, most importantly, become part of our closed LinkedIn group and our closed community. And in there is where the magic often happens, because you get people referring each other into opportunity, supporting each other, and just sharing. And that's what it's all about. So if you're financially able and you'd like to invest in your job search, head on over to www.execcareerjump.com, all one word, /club, and you'll find the landing page and come and give it a go. We'll see you in there. Anyway, back to the pod.
Excellent. And how much do ATS machines play into your thinking at the moment? To what kind of extent do you give importance to those machines?
I'm quite vocal about ATS systems, to be honest. And I think that they are not the candidate's nemesis the way, unfortunately, and this is my perception, rightly or wrongly, but this is certainly what I see and what I get back from clients, is they tend to be used as a fear-selling sales tactic by unscrupulous CV writers who want you to believe they have a secret magic sauce that, I mean, I saw this, on a CV writer's, I don't know, it's a LinkedIn banner or something, beat the ATS systems. Oh, what a load of rubbish, to be honest. If you write your CV properly, without style over substance, because I'm a firm believer that what's important on a CV is what it says, not what it looks like. Keep it really simple. Don't go for style over substance. And if you focus on where you want to get to, what is the role that you're looking for? Be clear on that, because if you don't know the role you're looking for, you're not at the CV writing stage. All you're going to do is spray and pray with that CV and it won't achieve anything for you. So know what you want to do and then do your research or your homework. What are they looking for? Look at 3, 4, 5, 6 job descriptions, role profiles, adverts. How are they describing it? What are they talking about? If they're talking about customer service, don't talk about customer care, because they're going to be looking for customer service. But it doesn't matter whether the CV is read by an ATS or a person. In essence, the person is putting the criteria in the ATS. I had somebody, a client, I think it was last year, asked me if they could buy a CV for a person to read and a CV for an ATS to read. And I said, but when it gets through the ATS, how are you going to then contact the company and say, now you've got through the ATS, here's my person's CV? So the reality is it has to be one CV that does it all. If you write it properly, you structure it simply, and you use the language of the roles that you're applying for, which you should be doing anyway if you want the CV to be relevant. And the reality is people overthink that language, because if they're in the industry and they're working in that industry and they're up to date with their knowledge, it's the language that they themselves will already be using. It shouldn't be rocket science. Then ATS systems aren't worth worrying about. They're only worth worrying about if you're going to create one of those, you'll have seen them, I suppose, same as me, Americanized resume style CVs that are 2 columns with stars on them grading your skills. Well, you've graded your skills, nobody else. I don't put any store by them because I haven't assessed your skills. You've assessed them. There's no qualification with that. So I'd rather hear what you've got to say about yourself, the outcomes that you're bringing me. So I don't put any store by ATS systems. I know companies use them. I don't think the scary thing that they're made out to be. And I think, unfortunately, my industry does a huge amount to create fear around those, to force people to buy. It just doesn't need to be.
I totally agree. Good. Thank you for clearing that up. So talk to me about LinkedIn then. We obviously connected on LinkedIn ourselves. You're a user of the platform.
I am.
You also help other people get more out of LinkedIn as well, don't you? So
I do.
Tell us a bit about your thoughts in terms of how people can get the best out of it.
I think it provides a phenomenal opportunity for job seekers. And it comes down to the same kind of thing with the CV around the know what you want your CV to do for you, is that before somebody uses LinkedIn, and the conversation I will have with people is, what are you using it for? Are you using it to find a job? Are you using it to widen your network? Are you using it so you can demonstrate your expertise because you're going through a career change? And some professional people are just on there just having fun, to be honest. Somebody said that to me the other day. Why are you there? Because why you're there will then enable you to build a strategy. And I think that's the big thing with LinkedIn is it sounds complex when people start saying, you need to build a strategy to use the platform, but it doesn't need to be complex. You need to have a profile that, I'm going to use that word optimized, which is really overused. You need to have a profile that reflects you as a person and you as a professional. And this is where LinkedIn comes into its own, because a CV is a very short snapshot. You should have a little bit of personality in a CV, but it's very difficult to convey your personality. When they go to LinkedIn, they should really get a sense of you. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, you will start to get a sense of who I am. You'll very quickly know that I've got horses, dogs, cats, children, that I help people with CVs and LinkedIn profiles, and really get a sense of who I am as a person. And that's what should happen. And that doesn't happen. People, I think they forget the personal element. They become very stuffy and professional on LinkedIn, and it doesn't need to be like that. And then they lurk in the background and don't say anything and don't speak to people and don't build those relationships. Fear, mainly, if I stick my head above the parapet, then something really bad might happen. And so they kind of hide in the background. And I think, and you probably know this as well, I think the general figure is that about 1% of LinkedIn users create the content, which is unbelievable. And then there's that, I don't have anything to say. Nobody wants to hear what I've got to say, but they do. But the reality is that you can't say that because you're not saying anything. So it's fear, and it comes down to that I'm not worthy. It's the same self fear that comes in with everything else. I'm now putting myself out there on a global platform. So they either have a dusty profile that they've never optimized, doesn't really reflect who they are and what they do. And then if they do have that, and I get this a lot, people that I will write profiles for and then go back to them and say, I've written you that profile, which is great, but you do know LinkedIn won't work for you if you're not using it. And so you're just going to sit there. If you think about it, if somebody goes in, a recruiter goes in, they've got your dream job, and they type in the details to do a search, and 100 people come back in that search, the search results, there's 100 people. And 50 of those people have great profiles and they're using the platform. And 50 of those people have great profiles and they're not using the platform. If you wrote the LinkedIn algorithm, which profiles would you put at the top? It wouldn't be those that aren't using the platform. It would be those that are, because LinkedIn wants recruiters who are paying for the privilege to do these searches to stay on the platform. So they want them to get the results they're looking for. So people will say to me, it doesn't work for me. Well, of course it doesn't, because you're not using it. And so you have to use the platform. And if you're not comfortable creating your own content, my advice to people is, if you're not ready to put your own posts out, that's fine. But why don't you start talking on other people's posts? You do this a lot, and I do this. We spend quite a bit of time on LinkedIn, engaging with other people's content and having conversation. And people that put content on LinkedIn want those conversations. They want you to talk to them. That's why it's there. So if you're not going to create your own content, the one piece of advice I would give to somebody is, You can become visible by engaging with other people's content. And the number of job seekers that I go to, and I'll go when someone says, Elaine, can you write my profile? The first thing I could do is go to their profile and check out their activity. And then I'm saying to them, but you're not using the platform. So one of the key things we've got to do is get you there. And the biggest piece of advice I give people is say, put 15 minutes aside every day, only 15. You can do it in 3 5-minute blocks. You can do it in 1 15-minute block. It doesn't need any more than that. And just scroll through the feed and start commenting. Meaningful, don't just put on great post, because actually it doesn't mean anything. I only engage on content that resonates with me, where I've got something to add, or I don't put meaningless comments on. So scroll through your feed and start looking at content that you think, oh, that's interesting. If you've got something to add to the debate, and you will find there are plenty of debates on LinkedIn that you can add to. And then as you get more confident, start looking for the content, so you can search the hashtags, for example, hashtag leadership or something. Groups are a great way to build your network and to build your confidence, joins. But the number of people that will tell me they didn't even know LinkedIn groups exist, and I will give clients a list of groups that I've looked at and said, these groups here are all for your industry and your level. And if you join them, you can build your network that way. So 15 minutes a day, don't have to create your own content, but 15 minutes a day to engage with other people's content. You'd be surprised the difference that it can make.
Huge, loads of value in there. Right. So let's pull that down into a top line summary of some of the stuff I heard there, just to play it back. So for a start, it's about it being intentional. Yeah,
absolutely.
And so even if the word strategy is a little bit, intimidating for people, just being intentional, I think.
Yes.
Knowing what you're trying to achieve. I thought that was a really cool point. The other thing is this idea that the profile's fine, but you've got to work the platform. And I think that was tremendous. It's a little bit like, I guess, you can have the gym membership, but you've still got to go and work out, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
That equipment is only of any use to you if you put it to work. And then I love the bit about comments as well. I think comments are the most underrated part of.
They are.
And we've known people get hired based on a conversation that started from a comment that they put down that has sparked an engagement, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Gold. Some really, really good guidance there. Thanks for that. Really, really good. What about on the actual profile itself? Then let's assume that people have taken your advice and they're out there commenting, they're paying into the ecosystem. And so then as a result, as you say, the platform and their activity is meaning more traffic is going to their page. What kind of things can people be thinking about actually on their own LinkedIn page?
Okay. So the first thing that people don't realize, and I think it doesn't occur to them, is your headline, which is the bit that sits under your name. That is why somebody visits your page. And so they need to see very quickly what you do. So if you're a job seeker, a really good approach is to start with the role title that you're looking for, and then follow that up with a very brief sentence of the very key outcome. So a good way of doing it is say, I'm trying to think of one that I've done, an event technology manager, actually delivering events of plus 30,000 people with budgets in excess of 10 million. That's the headline. And then at the end of it, some keywords that would come up for search results. So I think we probably put some of the technology name, I can't quite remember, but some of the technology names in, program management, that kind of stuff. So when you look at that person's profile, you can see straight away that she's not just an event manager, she's an event technology manager, which I learned as I was going through that process is slightly different. And then you can see the scope of what she does, events of over 30,000 people and budgets in excess of 10 million very quickly. So if you're looking for an event technology manager on that scale, straight away that her profile's worth visiting and you're going to go and have a look at it. So if your headline isn't right, and LinkedIn's so nice to people because it defaults it very kindly to your current or most recent role title. And people don't realize it does that. And they don't, when they update their, and I see this all the time, I go back to previous clients and say, I see that you've got a job. And do you know that your headline's now updated to your role title? No. Well, that's because you didn't untick it when you updated it, because LinkedIn will default the tick for you. People don't realize it happens. So your headline will get people to visit your profile. So your headline will draw them in, even if you're in those search results, because they're scanning down the headlines. Then they land on your profile, and there are 2 to 3 areas where they will go. First of all, when they first hit your page, there's that banner, the bit that goes behind your profile photo that a lot of people still don't use. And they've got that really nice LinkedIn gray. It's prime real estate, even to put your email address on, you know, to say something, to create a personal brand in there that talks about what you do. And you can do that really easily. I mean, what's that tool that you can use? Canva. Yeah. You know, it has a template for that. You can do it really easily. And then your about section, and the number of about sections I see that are maybe 4-5 lines long, one solid block of text. You have 2,600 characters to put in there. So that they will read that. That's where they're not going down to your experience section, to any of the other bits, because actually they want to know what outcomes you can bring for them. So that's your opportunity to say, this is me, this is what I do, these are the outcomes that I've brought for other organizations, and these are the outcomes that I can bring to you. Again, it comes back to that, directly related to where you want to be. So you're talking their language, you're talking about it in the language that they are using, almost like holding a mirror up to them. So when they're reading it, they're going, yes, this is my ideal candidate. This is the person that I need to talk to. And it should be doing that. You know, and I break it down. I put headings in them, so it's really easy for them to scan down and to see. And there are things that you can do. You can use emojis, not everybody's cup of tea, but you can put emojis on LinkedIn. The other thing you can do is Unicode text. If you just type in LinkedIn Unicode text converter in Google, it'll come up, but you want to use it for headings. So I would use it for something that says, that was one of the phrases I sometimes use is, well, that all sounds really nice, but can I actually deliver? And then put some key achievements underneath it. So I would put that, can I actually deliver, in Unicode text, but I wouldn't put any of my keywords in that because it's not searchable. So it's just where you want to break it up to make it easier to read. Otherwise it's flat text, and when you're scanning it, it can be quite difficult. Also makes your profile stand out a little bit.
So
and then there's that
text that comes out a little bit more bold and on an angle. Yeah. So
you can make it bold, italic, and there's other ones. I tend to just go for the bold, but it just makes it just stands it off the page so they can scan down and very quickly get a sense of, and it just looks a bit different from somebody else's. The other thing then is the featured section, which is a relatively new feature, as you and I both know, that sits directly underneath your about section. The best thing I think that people can do there is to record a 2-minute video where they are talking about who they help and what they can do. So I don't know, you know, I help CEOs in premium, what was the one I did recently? Premium airline brands do something, I can't remember. So you can talk about that. You can talk about the outcomes that you bring. But what you do with the video is people really get a sense of you as a person. They can see you, they can hear you. And people will look at all of that before they ever get to your experience section. So if you haven't grabbed them up there in the headline, so the headline doesn't grab them, they're not visiting your profile. You grab them with the headline, they visit your profile. It's like a landing page. You need to keep them there. So that's your banner, your about section, your featured section. And actually, by that point, you want them to be hitting that connect button.
So true. I think, ironically, I was thinking whilst you were talking, I think people have huge overblown personal profiles on their CV and then tiny about this.
Yeah, it is unbelievable.
Copy and paste the two.
Yes.
You could almost reverse those two trends, couldn't you?
You could, and because there's a big trend to put as much as possible at the top of a CV. But you're right, they put nothing in the LinkedIn at all. And you know, some of the best LinkedIn profiles I've seen are where there's just a little hint of the person. You know, I had a client that spent his weekends looking after rescued big cats like lions and tigers and stuff, and we put that on there. It's like, that's interesting. That will make somebody think, oh, actually, how do you do that in the UK? I'm still not quite sure, but there you go. But it's different, you know, just quirky, but it tells you something about that person before you speak to them. And there isn't enough of that, I think, on LinkedIn. That some people are still quite stuffy.
Yeah. So Amelia, who we both follow, her says something like, I like branding, marketing, and tequila.
Yep. See, and that just, so you get that sense immediately, very succinctly, but absolutely, you totally understand who she is, and you get a sense of the kind of person that you'll be speaking to. And people are frightened to do that. It's almost like job seekers and professionals who aren't using it to run their own business think that they need to be a certain way, where they still need to be a person, and it's that person that will draw somebody to them.
100%. Fantastic guidance again in there. Loads. So one other quick question before we let you go, while we've got you here. You've obviously gone your own route and are working on the CV Friends business.
Yeah.
A lot of others going that route at the moment, Elaine, and taking the decision to do their own thing.
Yep.
What do you see as the pros and cons, and what would you say to somebody in terms of if they're thinking about doing their own thing versus taking another employed job?
Gosh, yeah. Now, that's interesting, because it took me 6 months from the idea to even get to the point of being brave enough to put my big girl pants on and do it. So my first advice is, if you need to know the concept that you've got will work, right? But let's assume that you've done that, okay, is to just do it. Because the number of people that I speak to that have a concept, have an idea, have a skill set, have something, somebody once said to me when I first started with the CV writing, I'm not an expert, right? And I would still tell you I'm not an expert, because I think that we're all learning every single day. Elaine, you only need to be 1 or 2 steps in front of the people behind you for you to be able to teach them something. So it is to be really clear on the value that you have and that you can bring, and then just do it. Right. And you will question yourself. I do it every day. I don't know, I'll see a post and somebody and think, I'm just nowhere near as good as them. I shouldn't be doing this. And we all do it. But it's to not let that take a foothold and to keep going. And so if you think that you have something that other people need, because that's what it comes down to, then just do it, because you can hang around forever, but
just do it.
Yeah.
In the words of Nike, get on with it.
Yeah. I always say to my kids, you have to reach for the stars, right? You may never touch them, but you'll sure as hell be on the path to get there. But if you don't reach for those stars, well, you're never going to get on the path. So it's certainly never going to happen. So just do it. What's the worst that can happen? And it comes down to that, isn't it? It's that, what is actually the worst that can happen? You might not succeed. Well, the world's not going to fall apart, is it? Then try something else. But if you don't try, you'll never know. Yeah,
fantastic advice. And you don't meet many people who have taken the leap who regret it, to be honest with you.
No, I don't think I've met anybody. I've met people that maybe the first time it didn't work, but they learned something from that, and then they tried again, and then it worked. And so there is that whole, that pride. I'm not sure pride's the right word, but that, that belief that comes from that you had the courage to do it, and we are all people, we're just normal people.
Absolutely. Where can someone find you if they want to reach out for help, or if they want to follow up if they've listened to the session today?
Best place to find me is where I spend most of my days hanging out, which is LinkedIn. So I do have a website, which is cvfriends.co.uk. But actually, the reality is that you find most of my stuff on LinkedIn, and I'm just Elaine Weir.
Fantastic. Well, look, we really appreciate you giving up your time.
It's been fantastic.
Loads and loads of value in there. Loads and loads of value. So I think it's an episode that's going to be hugely appreciated. Please do follow up with Elaine if you're looking for any support, or if you want to connect to her. As she says, she's a big user of the LinkedIn ecosystem and a good person to be following in any case. And just thanks again. Really, really nice to put a conversation on tape for people to listen to, and let's keep in touch. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
You've been listening to the Career Jump podcast with Andrew McCaskill. For more resources and information, just head over to the Career Jump website at www.execcareerjump.com to supercharge your job search and start making moves. Let's get to work.